Welcome back, Coinology. The story of a single cent may seem too small to carry weight in the vast machinery of history. Yet, sometimes, it is the smallest pieces of metal that hold the greatest echoes of a nation's past. The year was 2000. The world was standing at the edge of a new millennium, full of technological promises and the quiet anxiety of change. Amid this transformation, the United States Mint in Denver struck millions of 1-cent coins, each bearing the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, the same dignified profile that had watched over America's pockets and dreams for nearly a century. One of these coins, marked with a tiny D just below the date, would go on to capture the imagination of collectors, historians, and dreamers alike. It is known today as the 2000 D Lincoln cent. At first glance, the 2000 D penny is ordinary, copper-plated zinc, small, light, barely worth a whisper in the economy. But behind its reddish shine lies a story that stretches from the 19th century into the new digital age, a story of design, of symbols, of mass production, and of rare accidents that turn pocket change into fortune. To understand why a coin like this could one day be valued at $250 million in collector's lore, we must travel backward into the heart of American numismatic history. The image on the obverse, or front, of the coin is that of Abraham Lincoln, sculpted by Victor David Brenner in 1909. Brenner's portrait was chosen to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, marking the first time a real person appeared on a regular issue U.S. coin. His initials, VDB, were originally engraved at the bottom of the reverse side, but early critics thought them too prominent, and the mint ordered their removal. Decades later, those same initials returned, quietly placed on Lincoln's shoulder, where they remain on every cent to this day, a signature in miniature, reminding us that art endures even in the smallest of spaces. By 2000, the Lincoln cent had already seen nearly a century of change. It had survived 2 world wars, a Great Depression, and the switch from bronze to zinc in 1982, when the rising cost of copper made the old composition unsustainable. Each coin after that year carried a thin shell of copper over a heart of zinc, weighing 2.5 grams instead of the heavier 3.11 grams of earlier decades. The 2000 D followed this standard, copper-plated zinc, 19 millimeters in diameter, with a plain edge and a gleaming reddish tone when new. It bore the familiar inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the year 2000, symbols of faith, freedom, and time bound together in a tiny circle of metal. But what makes the Denver minted 2000 D so fascinating is not its design alone, it is the human story of minting, of precision and error, of how millions of identical coins can still give birth to miracles of rarity. In Denver that year, roughly 8.8 billion 1-cent coins were struck. The machines thundered day and night, pressing copper-plated blanks between steel dies with forces measured in tons. Every second, hundreds of coins emerged, perfect and identical, or nearly so. For in such massive production, perfection is an illusion. Minute imperfections creep in: doubled dies, misaligned strikes, off-center minting, broad strikes, cuts, and die cracks. And among these billions, a handful of errors slip through, unnoticed by the human eye but destined to become treasures for those who look closely enough. Somewhere, perhaps in the spring of that year, a single coin rolled off the Denver presses with a slightly doubled image. Maybe the word liberty thickened at the edges, maybe Lincoln's eye seemed to echo faintly, giving him a ghostly second glance. A worker might have brushed it aside, never realizing its future worth. Years later, collectors would hunt for it, magnifying glass in hand, scanning every penny dated 2000 with that tiny D, hoping to glimpse the flaw that transforms metal into myth. The legend of the 2000 D double die was born not in official records but in whispers, in online forums, in the excited voices of hobbyists who swore they had seen it. What makes these coins so powerful in imagination is their paradox. They are mass-produced, nearly worthless individually, yet their errors make them unique, priceless. A single coin struck with a rare variation can leap from a face value of 1 cent to a sale price in the thousands, tens of thousands, or in the mythic telling, hundreds of millions. In truth, the figure of $255 million is a symbol, a way of saying that even the most ordinary object can hold infinite value if it captures enough attention, enough mystery, enough hope. Every collector knows that the chase itself, the dream of finding that one extraordinary penny, is worth more than the metal it's made of. The design on the reverse of the 2000 D is the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Frank Gasparo's engraving depicts the monument with striking symmetry, 13 steps for the 13 original states, the seated statue of Lincoln visible at the center if one looks closely enough with a magnifying glass, e pluribus unum floating above out of many, one. It's a perfect metaphor for the cent itself, countless in number, yet together forming the foundation of America's currency, the first building block of every fortune. When collectors speak of value, they measure not just rarity but condition. The term mint state, abbreviated MS, refers to coins that have never circulated, preserved exactly as they left the press. The higher the number, up to MS 70, the closer the coin is to perfection. A flawless 2000D cent graded MS-70 by a trusted authority can already fetch hundreds or even thousands of dollars, not because of its material but because of its near impossible preservation. Add an error, a unique mint mark position, or a doubled feature, and the price climbs into legend. Some whisper of one specimen, said to be flawless, that changed hands in a private sale for an astronomical sum, becoming the mythical $255 million cent, though such tales live more in dreams than in verified records, and yet, myths have power. They breathe life into the pursuit of face glows with a warm hue. It reflects faces and decades, the memory of the turn of the millennium, of a nation stepping into the 21st century while still clinging to dreamers, became one of the pillars of American minting. Since 1906, its presses have turned raw metal into national symbols. The D stands not only for Denver but for determination, durability, and the democratic spirit that every cent represents. Even a penny carries the face of a president, the weight of history, and the promise of equality in value. 1 cent for every citizen. As the years pass, fewer people notice the details. Most see a penny and think of inconvenience, something to sweep aside, to forget. But for numismatists, each date and mint mark is a clue, a coordinate in time. They can trace changes in die design, small shifts in lettering, variations in the sheen of copper plating, even the microscopic texture left by the dies. The 2000D is a testament to the precision of late 20th century minting, yet it also reveals the enduring humanity of error. No machine is perfect. And it is in imperfection that beauty, and sometimes fortune, is found. Rumors spread about coins with missing clad layers, with broad strikes so wide they resemble medals, with double strikes that show two Lincoln profiles overlapping like a ghost of time. Photos circulate online, each promising proof of the next big find. Some are genuine, others are hopeful illusions. But the excitement they generate fuels the hobby, keeps the hunt alive. The idea that somewhere, in a forgotten coin jar or an unsearched bankroll, lies a cent that could rewrite the story of modern numismatics, that idea gives the 2000D its mythic life. Beyond the collector's world, the 2000D penny tells a broader story of America at the dawn of a new century. The economy was strong, technology was booming, and yet the humble cent still played its role, the coin of everyday life, of parking meters and gumball machines. Children learned math with pennies, adults ignored them, and historians cherished them. Each coin struck that year was both an object of commerce and an artifact of time. And as the digital age advanced, with cards and online payments taking over, the penny began to fade from daily use, but not from memory. The question often arises, should the penny be retired? Economists argue it costs more to make than it's worth. But those who love it say abolishing the cent would erase a century of tradition. The 2000D stands near the end of that legacy. Represent. The camera fades back and the light of dawn spills over the Rocky Mountains, and below, the Denver Mint stands quiet and monumental, its copper-green dome glowing faintly in the morning haze. Inside those walls, more than a century of history hums beneath the machinery. The presses that once struck silver dollars now produce billions of copper-plated zinc cents, each one carrying not just monetary value but a trace of American identity. It is here that the 2000D penny began its journey in fire, pressure, and precision. To understand the magic of this coin, we must step inside the process itself. Imagine sheets of zinc, coated in the thinnest layer of copper, gleaming under fluorescent light. They are fed into machines that punch out blank discs called planchets. Each planchet weighs precisely 2.5 grams, its diameter 19.05 millimeters, dimensions that have remained almost unchanged for over a century. Before striking, the planchets tumble in polishing drums, their surfaces smoothed and shined. Then, they are fed between two engraved dies, one carrying Lincoln's portrait, the other the Lincoln Memorial. In an instant, with over 40 tons of pressure, the image is born. It happens thousands of times each minute, a metallic heartbeat that echoes through the minting floor. The coins fall into bins, the clatter like rain. Inspectors check random samples, ensuring sharpness of strike and even plating. Most are flawless, uniform, and destined for circulation. Yet every so often, the rhythm falters. A die shifts. A planchet misfeeds. A small bubble in the copper layer distorts the surface. To the machines, these are imperfections. To collectors, they are gold mines. The year 2000 was a pivotal time for the mint. It marked not only a symbolic new century but also the continuation of modern minting technology, digital engraving, laser scanning, computerized quality control. But even in this precision age, errors were inevitable. Some coins bore doubled dies, where the lettering appears doubled due to a misalignment in the die-making process. Others showed broad strikes, where the collar failed to hold the planchet in place, creating a wider, stretched appearance. A few had off-center strikes, partial images, or missing layers that revealed the silver-gray zinc beneath the copper coating. Each of these errors transformed an ordinary cent into an object of fascination. Among the most coveted are the doubled dies. Collectors still whisper about one rumored 2000D specimen where the word liberty and the date show faint but distinct doubling, visible only under magnification. Whether it exists or not, the rumor persists, drawing searchers into endless hunts through jars and rolls. The thrill of discovery, that sudden spark when you think you found something unique, drives the hobby. The possibility that a coin struck for 1 cent could someday be valued in the millions, or, as legend insists, $255 million, is what keeps this quiet passion alive. To many outside the collecting world, such numbers seem absurd. But value in numismatics is not born of material, it is born of story, rarity, and perfection. A coin becomes priceless not because of what it's made from, but because of what it represents. The 2000D penny symbolizes the closing of one era and the beginning of another. It embodies the last years before the penny began to vanish from circulation, before inflation rendered it nearly obsolete. For some collectors, it is a time capsule, the last breath of the 20th century. The Lincoln design itself carries layers of meaning. Lincoln's gaze, solemn and slightly distant, looks to the right, toward the future. The motto "In God We Trust" arches above, while liberty rests at his left, a reminder of the ideals he defended. Below, the year 2000 grounds him in time, and the tiny D mint mark ties him to a specific place, Denver, Colorado. Turn the coin over, and the Lincoln Memorial stretches across the reverse, perfectly aligned and balanced. Inside its tiny columns sits the faint image of Lincoln's seated statue, so small that many people never notice it. It is Lincoln within Lincoln, a reflection of his presence both as man and as monument. The artistry behind this design is no accident. Frank Gasparo, who engraved the memorial reverse, once said that he wanted Americans to carry a piece of Washington, D.C., in their pockets, a symbol of unity and permanence. Every cent, he believed, was a reminder that democracy is built on countless small contributions. That sentiment rings true even today. As we move deeper into the story, the camera glides across countless jars, drawers, and boxes, the private archives of collectors. Inside these quiet sanctuaries, history lives in miniature. Each coin is catalogued, graded, sealed in protective holders. Labels mark the date, mint, and grade MS65, MS67, sometimes MS69. For the 2000D, the finest known examples shimmer in uncirculated brilliance, their surfaces untouched by human hands. Under magnification, every line of Lincoln's coat, every humans have always sought the flawless object, the unblemished gem, the pure note, the perfect coin. The 2000D penny, simple and common, invites us to see perfection in the everyday. It reminds us that value can arise from attention itself. Imagine a young collector, perhaps a child in 2001, saving pennies in a jar, learning the feel of coins between their fingers. 2 decades later, that same person opens the jar and looks closely at the dates. There, among the dull brown cents, one glows slightly redder, sharper. A 2000D. They lift it to the light, turn it, and feel a connection not just to metal, but to time itself. That moment, the spark of curiosity, is where value begins. Numismatics, at its heart, is storytelling through metal. Each coin is a document written in copper and zinc, a record of an era's art, economy, and ideals. The 2000D belongs to the age of transition, from analog to digital, from cash to cards, from pocket change to invisible currency. It bridges 2 centuries, carrying the weight of one and the hope of the next. Over the years, collectors have catalogued varieties of this cent: weak strikes, die cracks across Lincoln's head known as spiked heads, misaligned dies creating a doubling effect, and transitional plating errors. Some examples have been slabbed by grading companies as unique specimens. Each discovery adds another thread to the legend. Stories circulate of coins found in the unlikeliest places, beneath floorboards, buried in gardens, lodged in the lining of old wallets. One tale tells of a Colorado farmer who, while cleaning out his late father's shed, found a small tin labeled Lucky Change. Inside was a roll of shiny 2000D cents, untouched since the day they left the mint. The farmer, curious, sent them for grading, and among them was one coin so pristine, so perfect in luster and strike, that experts could hardly believe it had survived in such condition. Its sale, whispered among collectors, fueled the myth that a simple cent could be worth a king's ransom. Of course, not every story is true. But every story serves a purpose. It keeps history alive. It keeps people looking. In that sense, every search through a pile of pennies is a search for meaning, for connection with a tangible past. As the camera fades to a slow rotation of the 2000D coin, magnified until its texture fills the screen, the narrator's voice softens. This, it says, is more than metal. This is memory pressed into matter. The scratches, the gleam, the faint imperfections, they are the fingerprints of time. To hold one is to touch the pulse of a nation, steady and small. The sound of clinking coins rises again, millions of them, echoing like a symphony of copper. Each one tells the same story, yet each one is different. The 2000D is not rare in quantity, but it is rare in meaning. It stands as a bridge between centuries, a piece of art hidden in plain sight. And somewhere, perhaps still undiscovered, lies the one, the sense so flawless, so perfectly struck, so mysterious in origin that its value defies logic. Whether it truly sold for $255 million or not no longer matters. What matters is that the myth keeps the search alive as the light fades to black, leaving only the faint outline of Lincoln's profile. His face, calm and resolute, seems to whisper across the years a reminder that greatness. The story of the 2000D penny continues, not within the walls of the mint this time, but out in the world, in pockets, in purses, in forgotten jars. Each coin begins its life in order, precise, identical, but once it leaves the mint, it enters chaos. Human hands carry it through lives and decades. It clinks against keys, slides across countertops, rests in the dark corners of drawers. And somewhere in that endless circulation, it gathers meaning. By 2001, the new millennium had settled in. The world was changing faster than ever, but the penny still lingered. Prices rose, technology advanced, and yet there it was, the copper glint in the palm, the same familiar face of Abraham Lincoln. For many, it was invisible, a nuisance, something to toss in a dish. But for a few, it became a relic of something pure, something enduring. Among those few were the numismatists, patient, methodical, almost poetic in their devotion to detail. To them, every 2000D cent was a potential story waiting to be uncovered. Collectors have a word for this obsession: the hunt. The thrill of searching, not knowing what you will find, is what makes the hobby more than just accumulation. They speak of roll hunting, the slow, meditative act of unwrapping bankrolls of pennies, one by one, scanning for mint marks, varieties, or elusive errors. Under bright light and magnification, every surface becomes a landscape, tiny mountains of metal, microscopic valleys where copper plating ripples like frozen waves. The collector's heart quickens at the slightest anomaly. Was that doubling on liberty? Was that a misaligned die? Could this be the coin? The legend of the 2000D penny worth hundreds of millions did not begin in a museum or mint report. It began in whispers, in internet forums, late-night conversations, stories passed from one collector to another. Someone, somewhere, claimed to have found a specimen so flawless, so pure, so impossibly perfect that experts were stunned. Whether this event ever truly occurred doesn't matter, what matters is the myth it created. Like a modern treasure map, it gave the world of coin collecting a new holy grail. In that myth, the coin represented perfection, a 1-cent piece struck with absolute precision, its surface is mirror smooth, its color rich and red, its strike so sharp that even the tiniest details of Lincoln's hair were distinct. The Denver Mint's D was perfectly centered, the lettering crisp, the luster unbroken by even a speck of dust. Some said it was discovered in a sealed mint bag, untouched since the day of striking. Others said it was found by accident in a roll of change purchased from a local bank. Over the years, the story shifted, retold and reshaped, growing larger with every telling until it reached mythic proportions, the coin that could make anyone rich beyond imagining. But beyond myth lies a quieter truth about human fascination. The coin's value in collectors' circles often comes from connection, not currency. When a collector looks at the 2000D cent, they don't just see copper and zinc. They see history, craftsmanship, the skill of engravers, the pulse of the minting machines, and the echo of the man whose face it bears. Lincoln, immortalized in metal, becomes a symbol of endurance, of how ideals can outlive centuries. Consider the artistry of the design itself. Victor David Brenner never lived to see his creation span 3 centuries. His 1909 portrait of Lincoln has endured longer than almost any other American coin design. Through wars, depressions, and cultural revolutions, the penny has remained constant. That alone makes it a powerful artifact. By the time the 2000D was struck, the portrait had already seen nearly 100 years of use, with only subtle refinements. The fact that this design persisted into the 21st century speaks to its timelessness and to America's quiet attachment to the familiar, but time changes everything. The copper of the 2000D darkens over years, shifting from bright red to mellow brown. A coin's color tells its story, how much sunlight it's seen, how long it's rested untouched. Collectors classify these hues meticulously: red for fresh mint brilliance, red-brown for those beginning to tone, brown for those fully aged. Each shade adds character, and each coin tells a slightly different tale of survival. In the marketplace, the 2000D has found its place not just as a collector's item but as a symbol of the end of an era. By the mid-2000s, the cost of minting each penny was already higher than its face value. The copper-plated zinc composition, once a cost-saving measure, became another financial burden. Yet the mint continued, driven not by economics but by sentiment. The penny, after all, had become part of the national identity. Abandoning it would feel like letting go of something essential. Still, rumors spread of its impending demise. Economists called for its retirement. Editorials debated its worth. But collectors smiled quietly, knowing that if the penny were ever discontinued, its value would only rise. The 2000D, as one of the last great production years before serious discussions of abolition, would stand as a relic of a fading age. In private collections, the highest grade examples glowed like jewels. When auctioned, they fetched surprising sums, not hundreds of millions, but enough to capture headlines. Some brought in thousands, others tens of thousands. Each sale added another layer to the myth. Online, images of flawless 2000D cents spread across forums and social media, each one promising the possibility of hidden treasure in everyday change. People began checking their pockets, their jars, their drawers. Children learned to examine pennies under magnifying glasses, their eyes wide with hope, and in that collective searching, the coin became something more, a shared story. In a world dominated by digital numbers and invisible transactions, the tactile weight of a penny became almost sacred. It reminded people of a time when money was something you could feel, cold, solid, reassuring. It connected generations, grandparents teaching grandchildren to look for mint marks, parents remembering their own childhood collections. The 2000D penny became a bridge between past and present. Its journey through time mirrors the journey of America itself. The early 2000s were years of optimism shadowed by uncertainty. Technology was rewriting daily life, yet people still held on to the symbols of the past. The penny, with Lincoln's face, carried not just monetary value but moral weight, a reminder of honesty, humility, and perseverance. To many collectors, that was the true reason to treasure it. Even today, 2 decades later, the 2000D still circulates quietly. You might receive one in change, unknowing that you hold a piece of a vast story. Most people spend it without thought. But if you pause, if you turn it under the light and look closely, you'll see the fine lines of engraving, the gleam of copper, the mark of Denver's proud mint. You'll see a century's worth of design, 1,000 tiny stories pressed into one small circle. For those who collect, the 2000D is a reminder that history hides in plain sight. Greatness, sometimes, is as small as a penny. Every collector's discovery begins with attention, the willingness to look closer, to find meaning where others see none. That act, repeated millions of times across decades, keeps history alive. And then there are the legends that refuse to die. Some claim that deep within the mint's archives lies a record of a perfect specimen, a coin struck on a flawless planchet, using fresh dies polished to mirror brilliance, inspected and sealed before circulation. Others whisper that a private collector, years ago, acquired this coin through an estate sale, unaware of its value until experts recognized its perfection. Whether true or imagined, such stories remind us that mystery is the soul of collecting. The possibility, not the proof, fuels desire. As the narrator's voice lowers, the camera lingers on a single coin under magnification. The letters shimmer, the tiny D glows like a scar of craftsmanship. The field of the coin reflects light in soft ripples, like liquid copper. Around it, darkness, purr from history saying, look closer. And every time someone listens, the story grows. Somewhere tonight, perhaps in a small town far from Denver, someone will open a forgotten jar of coins. They will pour them out under a lamp, hear the metallic clatter, and see one glint slightly differently. A 2000D to look beyond the edges of the coin, beyond the years, as if aware that his image, born in 1909, still carries meaning in a world far removed from his own. This is not the end, only the middle of a much longer journey. The next part will explore the economics, the global fascination, and the modern-day market of these coins, how collectors, auction houses, and even historians con. Time moves on, and yet the penny endures. 2 decades after the year 2000, the world around it has changed almost beyond recognition. Digital money flows through invisible channels, people buy and sell with a tap of a screen. The jingle of coins has faded from daily life. And still, the 2000D Lincoln cent remains tiny, persistent, stubbornly physical. In basements, attics, and small coin shops, the legend continues to breathe. Collectors trade stories more often than they trade the coins themselves. They speak of the Denver batch, of the perfect strike, of rolls that have never been opened since that first shipment from the mint. Each story keeps the myth alive, because every myth needs believers. The market for the 2000D has matured. Dealers list high-grade examples with reverence. Photos on auction sites show coins glowing under soft light, every detail sharp. The price tags vary, $20, $200, sometimes more. Not hundreds of millions, but enough to remind us that imagination adds its own zeros. What truly sells is the dream, the belief that, somewhere out there, a perfect specimen still waits. At major coin shows, glass cases display examples in protective slabs. The labels read 2000D MS69RD. Under magnification, they are almost flawless, the copper surface is pure and bright. Visitors lean close, tracing Lincoln's profile, the tiny steps of the memorial. To most, it's just a penny; to a numismatist, it's the summit of precision, the frozen moment when art met industry. Auctioneers speak with a kind of reverence. They describe strike quality, luster, die state. They tell how the Denver Mint, in those first months of the millennium, produced some of the sharpest cents of the modern era. The presses were newly calibrated, the dies fresh, the copper plating rich in color. Collectors nod, knowing that minting conditions, like weather on a farmer's field, can make the difference between ordinary and extraordinary, but beyond technical talk lies emotion. Each coin, especially one from the dawn of a new century, carries nostalgia. The year 2000 feels recent yet distant, a moment suspended between analog memory and digital reality. The 2000D embodies that hinge in time, a 20th century face looking into a 21st century world. Historians note how currency reflects national identity. The Lincoln cent has been a mirror for American values: perseverance, honesty, unity. The motto E pluribus unum, out of many, one, seems almost prophetic in an age of fragmentation. When people hold a penny, they hold a reminder that unity is built from countless small pieces, and yet, even symbols evolve. In 2009, the Mint replaced the memorial reverse with 4 different designs celebrating Lincoln's bicentennial, and later, the Union Shield reverse we see today. That change quietly ended the 50-year reign of the Lincoln Memorial design. The 2000D, then, stands near the end of that chapter, the last full generation of the classic design. To collectors, that gives it extra resonance. It is not only a coin, it is a farewell to an image that defined half a century. In the wider market, coin grading companies became the arbiters of truth. With sealed plastic holders and serial numbers, they turned collecting into science. Every 2000D submitted for grading tells part of a story. Some emerge as ordinary MS64S, others sparkle as MS68S or rarer still. The finest examples travel from one private collection to another, whispered about in forums, traded quietly at shows. A few sales have become legend. A brilliant MS70 specimen, perfectly struck in glowing red, sold at a national auction for a sum far beyond expectations. The media exaggerated it, blogs called it the $200 million penny. The figure was fantasy, but the fascination was real. People who had never cared about coins suddenly searched their change. The myth had done its work, it turned attention back to history, and that is the secret of lasting value: attention. Money gains meaning only when someone looks at it, studies it, gives it a story. The 2000D cent is worth what the world imagines it to be, and imagination, it turns out, is limitless. Meanwhile, the Denver Mint continues its work, striking billions of coins each year. But the rhythm is quieter now, less romantic. Machines hum behind glass barriers, monitored by computers. The artisans who once polished dies by hand are fewer. Yet the old traditions survive in subtle ways. Each new coin still carries a mint mark, a trace of pride in place. Somewhere in that metallic heartbeat, the ghost of 2000 still echoes. Collectors often talk about the feel of a coin, the weight, the balance, the temperature of metal against skin. The 2000D, at 2.5 grams, seems almost weightless, but when held with intention, it feels solid, deliberate. Its edges are smooth, its surface a blend of copper sheen and time-darkened tones. Under certain light, it seems to glow from within. That quiet glow has captivated people for 25 years. Numismatics is, in many ways, the study of attention. The 2000D teaches patience. It asks observers to slow down, to notice details invisible to casual eyes: the texture of the fields, the way the rim catches light, the sharpness of Lincoln's jawline. Each detail speaks of craftsmanship in an age of speed. In interviews, modern collectors describe the emotional pull. They speak of sitting at a table under a lamp, magnifier in hand, hours passing unnoticed as they sift through coins. They call it meditation, therapy, connection. The 2000D appears often in these stories, not because it is rare, but because it reminds them why they began collecting in the first place, and so the myth continues to evolve. New generations discover it through videos, documentaries, and online posts proclaiming the multi-million-dollar penny. Skeptics laugh, but the laughter itself spreads the legend. Each viewer becomes a potential searcher, each searcher another link in the chain of fascination. What began as a small, practical coin has become a cultural symbol. It represents the idea that everyday objects can hide extraordinary stories. It proves that value is not fixed, it grows in the mind, in the heart, in the telling. The film's imagery returns to the coin itself. We see it spinning slowly in the dark, light sliding across its surface. The sound of the spin blends with distant machinery, then fades into silence. The narrator's voice becomes almost a whisper. The 2000D Lincoln cent, it says, is not just a piece of metal. It is a message from one century to the next. It reminds us that progress does not erase memory, that even in an age of code and pixels, a bit of copper can still command wonder. Somewhere, someone still searches. Somewhere, another pair of hands opens a roll of pennies and pauses at that tiny D. Somewhere, another story begins, and that, perhaps, is the greatest value of all, the ability of a simple coin to keep people dreaming. There is something timeless about a coin. It begins as metal, mined from the earth, refined by human hands, pressed by machines built with purpose, and yet, once struck, once released into the world, it becomes more than material. It becomes a traveler, a witness, a vessel of memory. The 2000 penny has lived 25 years in the pockets and drawers of America. It has crossed borders, been forgotten in glove compartments, wedged beneath couch cushions, and rediscovered by children. It has been given in change, dropped on sidewalks, sealed in albums. It has lived 1,000 small lives. Each scratch, each faint fingerprint, tells of its passage through the everyday stories of ordinary people. But among these billions of stories lies a rarer narrative, the pursuit of perfection. Collectors, dreamers, and historians all chase the same elusive ideal, the flawless coin, the untouched survivor, the artifact that time itself forgot to wear down. For them, the 2000 represents something poetic. The last breath of a century, captured forever in copper. Imagine the Denver Mint in early 2000. The air is filled with the scent of metal and oil. Giant presses thunder rhythmically, turning blank planchets into gleaming coins by the millions. Each strike is precise, a meeting of immense pressure in perfect alignment. For a moment, every coin is identical, but the moment they fall into bins, small differences begin to emerge, tiny flaws, variations in luster, microscopic misalignments that will one day decide their fate. Out of those billions, perhaps only a few dozen would one day be judged perfect. And it is those few that have sparked imaginations, headlines, and legends of unimaginable worth. Some call them the $255 million pennies, symbols not of literal value, but of collective wonder. The truth, as every collector knows, lies somewhere between reality and myth. A coin cannot be worth hundreds of millions in a marketplace defined by rarity and demand, and yet, the legend persists, because it speaks to something deeper in the human spirit, our need to believe that hidden treasures still exist, that miracles can hide in plain sight. Money itself is an idea built on belief. A cent is worth 1/100th of a dollar not because the metal says so, but because society agrees it is so. When a single coin, like the 2000 captures attention beyond its denomination, it reveals how fragile and powerful belief can be. It reminds us that value is not just in gold or copper, but in the stories we tell about them. The camera pans slowly across scenes of collectors at work, a magnifying glass glinting in the light, hands flipping through rolls of coins, eyes scanning for that one perfect gleam. There is silence, save for the soft clink of metal. This is the music of patience, of obsession, of passion turned into ritual. The narrator continues. In the heart of every collector beats the same rhythm as the mint press, the repetition, the persistence, the endless search for something that might not even exist. It is not greed that drives them, it is reverence. To collect is to preserve, to guard against forgetting, to hold time in one's hand. The 2000 Lincoln cent becomes, in this light, a kind of relic. It connects eras, bridging the analog and the digital, the tactile and the intangible. Its weight, 2.5 grams, may be small, but its symbolism is immense. It carries the face of Lincoln, a man who believed in unity through struggle. It carries the words "In God We Trust," a statement of faith in something beyond material wealth. It carries the motto "E pluribus unum," a promise that from many, we remain one, and it carries the word liberty, that eternal idea America still strives to perfect. Every letter on that coin is a whisper of history, every year stamped on its face is a promise that time itself can be recorded. The year 2000, in particular, stands as a threshold, the end of one millennium and the beginning of another. It was a year of anxiety and excitement, of transition and hope. Computers feared the Y2K bug. Nations celebrated the turning of time, and amid that noise, in the city of Denver, millions of small copper discs emerged quietly from the presses, each carrying a date that marked both an ending and a beginning. Now, decades later, those small discs remind us that not everything fades, some things endure. Even as the world races ahead, the coin becomes a mirror, not of wealth, but of continuity. We see in it our desire to hold on to something real, something that won't vanish when a battery dies or a signal drops. Collectors often speak of the moment of discovery. That split second when a coin pulled from an ordinary roll reveals something extraordinary. Perhaps it's a double die, a minting error, a lustrous red finish untouched by a GEI. In that instant, time stops, the collector's heart races, breath shortens, hands tremble. The thrill is not just in finding the coin, it's in touching history. The 2000 inspires that moment again and again. Because even if the odds of finding $1 million example are infinitesimal, the act of searching is itself a kind of hope. Each searcher joins a long line of dreamers, from gold prospectors to treasure hunters to scholars sifting through archives. They all look for meaning in what others overlook. The documentary's imagery deepens, shots of old coin albums, faded family photos, rolls of pennies stacked like tiny monuments. A child's voice asks, "Why is it worth so much?" An elder replies, "Because people believe it is." That simple truth carries more weight than the coin itself. Economists will tell you that scarcity determines value, historians will say that context gives meaning, but philosophers understand that value is also emotional. A penny that belonged to a grandparent may be priceless to one person, worthless to another. So when the world declares that a 2000D penny is worth $255 million, what it's really saying is that the story has captured the human heart, and the human heart, unlike any marketplace, has no limit. We return to the image of Lincoln on the obverse. His gaze is steady, reflective, eternal. He has watched wars, recessions, triumphs, and revolutions pass. Now, in the 21st century, his face still anchors the smallest coin in circulation. Perhaps that is fitting, perhaps it is a reminder that greatness begins small, that the measure of value lies not in size or denomination, but in endurance. The 2000D Lincoln cent endures because it speaks to that idea. It is the small made mighty, the ordinary made sacred, and as long as people continue to believe that a single cent can be worth millions, it will continue to shine, not as currency, but as a story that refuses to die. The music swells gently. We see the coin one last time, resting in the palm of a hand. Light ripples across its surface, 1,000 tiny reflections merging into one. The hand closes, and the voice of the narrator fades. Every century leaves behind relics, the pyramids, the cathedrals, the circuits of silicon, but sometimes, the truest relics are the smallest. A coin like this one, born in Denver, year 2000, reminds us that even the tiniest things can carry the weight of time, belief, and dreams. Every treasure begins as an object, only later does it become a mystery, and for the 2000D Lincoln cent, the mystery did not come from gold or rarity, but from attention. Millions of eyes searching, millions of hands turning coins over in hope. Collectors began to notice patterns: a slightly thicker rim, a sharper strike, a subtle dye polish mark that appeared only on Denver pieces from certain presses. Forums filled with photographs, arguments, magnified images compared pixel by pixel. What started as a hobby turned into a worldwide investigation. A retired machinist from Kansas remembered working at the mint in 2000. He spoke of a week when the press alignment was recalibrated, producing coins of unusual clarity. Maybe, he said, a small batch struck during that window became the near-perfect examples sought today. No one could confirm it, but the story spread. Another spark for the legend. In the markets of the early 2020s, digital auction houses became new arenas of discovery. One night, an ungraded roll of 2000D cents appeared online. Bidding began at $10. Within hours it climbed to thousands, fueled by rumor that the roll came from a bank vault sealed since the millennium. When the winner finally opened it on camera, the world watched live. The coin spilled out, bright, untouched, still smelling faintly of metal. None were the mythical $1,000,000 specimen, but the moment itself was magic, proof that wonder could still go viral. Numismatists call it the thrill of the hunt. It is what drives entire generations to spend nights sorting, cleaning, cataloging. Each coin examined under glass becomes a meditation on chance. To hold a penny and wonder if it might change a life is to touch the intersection of hope and history. The 2000D cent, struck by machines, has become a symbol of humanity's persistence in finding meaning. Its copper skin reflects not only light but time, the lingering warmth of a past century and the cool gleam of the one that followed. The documentary now moves through museums and private collections. A curator unlocks a drawer lined with black velvet trays. Each holds a Lincoln cent from a different era, the wheatbacks, the memorials, the shields. When the 2000D tray slides out, the curator smiles. These, she says, are the coins that made ordinary people look again. Because that, ultimately, is the 2000DS legacy. It invited people to see beauty in the smallest things. To remember that design and symbolism matter even when the denomination is 1 cent. It reminded Americans that art lives in everyday objects. On the obverse, Lincoln's portrait remains steadfast, his gaze turned slightly toward the future. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands, both architecture and metaphor. Its columns echo the pillars of democracy. Its tiny statue of Lincoln mirrors the larger image on the front. A coin within a coin, a man within his monument. In that symmetry lies genius, the narrator reflects. When the first Lincoln cent was issued in 1909, critics complained that placing a man's image on a coin was too regal, too European, but the public loved it. It humanized money. It said that ideals could have faces. By 2000, that face had endured for nearly a century, unchanged yet ever new. The Denver issue of that year carried more than metal, it carried memory. Collectors speak of patina, the slow darkening that gives old copper depth and character. The 2000D, though young by comparison, has begun to develop its own patina in human consciousness. It is no longer just a coin, it is a conversation between generations. Somewhere, a father hands his child a penny and says, "Keep this one, it's from the year 2000. The child looks puzzled, but someday, that small gesture will become a story retold. That is how myths survive, through hands, through words, through the quiet act of saving something small. The film cuts to a nighttime cityscape, neon lights, digital billboards advertising cryptocurrencies, cashless payments. Amid all the modern glow, the narrator asks softly, what happens to a coin when money goes invisible? Does it lose meaning or gain new one as relic? Perhaps both, or perhaps the penny's destiny was never to vanish but to become a symbol of tangibility, a reminder that value once had weight. We return to close-ups of collectors cataloging their finds. Each entry reads like poetry. 2000D, brilliant uncirculated, copper-plated zinc, 2.5G, Denver Mint. So clinical, yet so personal, each line a footprint of fascination. In hushed interviews, experts describe rare varieties: a possible double die on Liberty, a tiny die crack above Lincoln's hair, the barely visible doubling on the date. They debate authenticity, chase provenance, cross-reference die states. The search becomes science, but beneath it hums the heartbeat of wonder. Then comes the philosophical turn: money. The narrator says, is humanity's greatest story. It is trust made visible. It is the idea that one small mark on metal can represent labor, faith, and connection. When a 2000D penny circulates, it carries invisible fingerprints of thousands of people who believed in that idea. Each transaction is a tiny affirmation that society still works, that exchange still binds us, and when someone saves the coin instead of spending it, frames it, photographs it, tells its story, they turn commerce into culture, they transform a tool into art. The scene darkens again, only the outline of Lincoln's profile remains, lit from behind. The narrator's voice grows softer, almost intimate. The 2000D Lincoln cent teaches us that even in abundance, uniqueness survives, that billions of identical objects can still contain mystery, that time can carve meaning into metal as surely as a die does. It teaches that every era leaves traces, and those traces, small, circular, copper, outlive us all. The camera fades to black. A faint metallic ring echoes once, twice, then disappears into silence. A faint hum of machinery fades in, the rhythmic pulse of a coin press slowing down, then silence. The screen brightens to reveal a close-up of a 2000D penny resting on the palm of an old man's hand. The wrinkles of his skin look like the landscape of time itself. A whisper of narration begins. They say a penny has no value anymore, that it costs more to make than it's worth, that it's obsolete in a world that moves too fast for such small things. But maybe that's why the 2000D Lincoln cent still matters, because it reminds us that not everything measured in cents can be measured in worth. The penny is patience made metal. It asks you to slow down, to look closer, to see meaning in what others overlook. It tells you that value can hide in plain sight, that beauty doesn't shout, it endures. The 2000D, struck in the year when the world turned the page of a millennium, is not just a date on copper. It's a marker, a transition point between centuries, between ideals, between what was tangible and what would soon become virtual. It is a relic of the last time the world still felt analog. A symbol of simplicity before everything became screens and passwords. The narrator's tone deepens, almost confessional. To understand the 2000D is to understand why humans collect, why we hold on to objects long after they've lost practical purpose, why a coin, a stamp, a letter, a photograph, can mean more than gold. We do it to fight the silence of time. We do it to prove that we were here, that our hands touched something real. Collectors know this truth intimately. They speak of the soul of a coin. They say that if you listen closely enough, each one whispers its story, where it's been, who held it, what it witnessed, and while others laugh, those who listen understand that it isn't superstition, it's memory, because memory lives not in words, but in touch. A penny passed from hand to hand carries human warmth, microscopic traces of countless lives. It is a chain of connection, a tangible history of moments too small to record anywhere else. The camera drifts across faces, a child examining a penny under light, a collector tracing the raised edge with a finger, a historian noting imperfections in the die. Every face reflects the same quiet fascination. The 2000D Lincoln cent, minted in the heart of America, carries with it both legacy and longing. Legacy, because it continues a tradition begun in 1909, a century of Lincoln's profile symbolizing unity, integrity, and perseverance. Longing, because in a world of impermanence, it remains steadfast, unchanging, familiar. The narrator continues, Abraham Lincoln's image has watched over generations. He was chosen for this smallest coin not because he ruled with power, but because he led with humility. Every time you hold a penny, you hold that idea that greatness can live in smallness, that history can survive through ordinary things, and perhaps that is why stories of million-dollar pennies capture imaginations. Not because people truly believe they'll find one worth $255 million, but because the idea itself feels poetic, that something so common could hold unimaginable value. It reflects our deepest wish, that we ourselves might be more valuable than the world assumes. The 2000D penny, in this sense, is not just currency, it's metaphor. A reminder that the smallest things can carry the weight of entire dreams. The documentary's visuals now shift to slow-motion sequences, coins tumbling in air, their edges catching glints of light. Each one turns, reflecting the face of Lincoln again and again, as if time itself were circling endlessly. The narrator's voice becomes quieter, intimate, as though speaking directly to the listener. Somewhere right now, someone is holding a 2000D penny and doesn't even know it. It might be sitting in a jar on a kitchen counter, or lying forgotten in a car's cup holder, or resting beneath layers of dust in a drawer, and yet, in that stillness, it waits, silently carrying its centuries' worth of meaning. Someday, someone else will find it. They'll look closer, notice the tiny D beneath the date, and feel curiosity spark. Maybe they'll search online, maybe they'll stumble upon a story, this story, and in that moment, the coin will come alive again. It will move from being forgotten metal to a vessel of wonder. The narrator pauses, as if smiling softly. That's what coins do, they outlive us, and yet they remember us. They are time capsules, silent and faithful. The 2000D, though small, holds within it the heartbeat of a century and the echo of a nation's values. The film fades to a Montage old footage of Denver Mint workers operating presses, the gleam of freshly minted coins rolling down steel chutes, close-ups of Lincoln's eyes carved in steel dies, and then shots of people around the world today, scrolling through images of coins on their phones, rediscovering the past through pixels. It's a circle, the same fascination reborn through new mediums, the narrator continues. We live in an age where value is weightless, stored in clouds, sent across networks, invisible, and yet the penny endures. Maybe that's its truest magic, that in a world trying to escape matter, it still insists on being mattered. It still insists on being touched, held, felt, every scratch, every dent, every faded glint of copper. These imperfections are not flaws, they are proof of existence, proof that this coin, like every person, has traveled far, survived much, and still shines in its own way. The camera lingers on a close-up of the coin. The words "In God we trust" catch the light, the narrator whispers of those words are not just faith in the divine, they are faith in meaning itself, faith that even when things lose monetary worth, they never lose human worth. And perhaps that's why the 2000D penny, this small, humble artifact of the turning millennium, will outlast paper money, digital accounts, and even the concept of cash itself, because it carries a truth too simple to erase. That history is not made by big things alone, it's made by billions of small ones, each with its own story, each with its own soul. The music swells, a soft orchestra of strings and ambient echoes. We see the coin resting on a black surface, illuminated by a single warm light. The narrator's voice rises slightly, filled with reverence. The 2000D Lincoln cent is not just a relic of currency, it is a mirror of humanity. It shows us that value begins not with wealth, but with wonder, that even a cent, the smallest unit of exchange, can remind us of our shared history, our enduring faith, and our infinite capacity to believe. The light fades, the coin's reflection lingers a moment longer than its image, a faint glow suspended in darkness, then, only silence. The image flickers to life, grainy footage of a man sitting at his kitchen table in 2005, a magnifying glass in one hand, a small pile of coins in front of him. He's middle-aged, quiet, focused. A voiceover begins, calm and reflective. He didn't expect to find anything. He was just counting change, separating quarters from nickels, nickels from pennies, and then he saw it, the 2000D, shining faintly under the kitchen light. The copper glowed brighter than the rest. Something about the surface looked perfect, too perfect. He set it aside. He didn't know it then, but that simple act of curiosity would make him part of a story shared by millions, because across the world, other people were doing the same thing, checking, examining, wondering if the coin in their hand might be the one. From coin rolls in supermarkets to jars of change under beds, from metal detectors sweeping old parks to treasure hunters scouring flea markets, the search was on. The myth of the $1,000,000 penny had begun spreading through whispers, online forums, and early YouTube videos. Someone posted an image claiming to show a flawless 2000D, another claimed to have sold one for a fortune, and though no one could verify those stories, they didn't need to. The stories themselves were enough to ignite the imagination of an entire generation. The narrator continues, voice rich and measured. In the age of the internet, myths move faster than truth, but sometimes, that's what keeps truth alive, because even if the numbers aren't real, even if the market never reached hundreds of millions, the excitement was. The collective hope of finding something valuable in what others overlooked became the true treasure. The camera shows a montage, teenagers recording unboxing videos of coin rolls, elderly collectors at conventions examining slabs under bright lights, families sitting together, comparing dates and mint marks everywhere, people searching for the extraordinary in the ordinary. One numismatist, interviewed under the soft glow of his display case, says that people think it's about money. It's not. It's about connection. When you find a coin like this, you feel like you've touched time itself. Cut to slow footage of a mint worker in Denver polishing a die. The steel reflects his face for a moment before he sets it into the press. The narrator explains, the Denver Mint of 2000 was a symbol of continuity, the steady heartbeat of an institution that had struck billions of coins since the 19th century. Every coin pressed there carried not only precision, but pride. The D Mint mark was more than a letter, it was a signature of craft, a mark that said, made with care, built to last. Among collectors, Denver cents have a reputation for strength, for clean strikes and vibrant color. The 2000D embodies that legacy. A coin that seems to glow brighter than its face value allows. The film transitions into the voices of collectors around the world. A woman from Canada recalls how she found one in her change during a road trip through Colorado. A man from the Philippines holds up a small envelope, smiling as he tells how his cousin sent him one as a gift, for luck, for memory. A teacher from Germany explains how he keeps one in his desk drawer as a reminder that small details matter. The narrator weaves their stories together. Each 2000D penny that traveled abroad became an ambassador of nostalgia. A token of the past, a bridge across cultures. No other coin of such small denomination has traveled so far in both geography and imagination. In numismatic forums, people debate grades, mint errors, die states. Some talk about double strikes, off centers, or die cracks near the Lincoln Memorial steps. Others chase color tones, deep reds, golden hues, or rainbow surfaces caused by years of gentle oxidation. Each variation becomes a story, a discovery, a tiny piece of history waiting to be interpreted. The documentary sound design becomes ethereal, the clinking of coins becomes rhythmic, echoing like raindrops. The narrator says softly, coins are human fingerprints cast in metal. They hold the record of touch, of trade, of trust, and in the 2000D, those fingerprints have multiplied across millions of lives. Cut to an auction hall, bright lights, murmuring crowd. A slab 2000D Lincoln cent rests under glass, labeled MS7ERD, Denver Mint. The auctioneer's voice rises, bids escalating, 10,000, 12, 14, 15,000 sold. Applause, not because of the price, but because of the story behind it, the story of a small coin that refused to fade into anonymity. Then, silence, the narrator reflects, in every era, people need symbols. The ancients carved gods into stone, the Renaissance painted faith into frescoes, the modern age strikes ideals into metal discs. The penny may seem mundane, but it is a monument in miniature. A pocket-sized portrait of history, trust, and continuity. The 2000 DS mythology, its rumored worth in the hundreds of millions may be exaggerated, but myths serve a deeper function. They remind us that value begins with imagination, that even in an age of calculation, mystery still has a place. The film transitions to quiet streets at night. A young collector walks home, jingling change in his pocket. He stops under a streetlight, pulls out a coin, and looks at it. The camera zooms in, the faintly glinting in the dark. He smiles, not because it's rare, but because it means something. The narrator continues. The search for treasure has never been about wealth alone. It has always been about wonder, the joy of the hunt, the moment of recognition, the spark of discovery that makes life feel bigger than it is. And so, the story of the 2000D penny endures not because of numbers, but because it gives everyone permission to dream. A slow montage follows, children emptying piggy banks, old men cleaning coins with cotton gloves, magnifiers reflecting tiny beams of light, online communities sharing photos, museum curators cataloging exhibits labeled Lincoln cent, 1909 to present. The music swells, gentle piano chords, strings faint in the background. The narrator's tone softens, reverent, almost sacred. Someday, paper money will disappear, digital currency will rule the world, but somewhere, in drawers and albums, in jars and pockets, the 2000D penny will remain quiet, gleaming, eternal. It will whisper to future generations, we were once metal and meaning. We once held value you could touch. And that whisper will be enough. The screen fades to black. Then, in small white text, every coin tells a story. Some stories never end. The screen fades in from black, soft piano music hums like a heartbeat. A single penny lies in the dirt beside a sidewalk, half buried, unnoticed. Rain begins to fall, each drop echoing like time itself. A voice begins to speak, slow and deliberate, as if awakening a memory. There it is, forgotten, ordinary, dismissed. The 2000D Lincoln cent, lying still under the weight of years. A passerby steps near it, unaware another car splashes water over it, but the coin does not vanish. It endures, because value, real value, does not disappear when eyes look away. It only waits, patient, quiet, immortal. The narrator's tone deepens, reflective and human. When we speak of coins, we think of money, of worth, of trade, of numbers, but behind every coin, there is something much older, the idea of trust. A coin is humanity's first promise, a small, circular proof that one person believed another would keep their word. And so, the 2000D penny is not merely a fragment of metal, it is a memory of that promised. It represents how we once trusted things we could touch, how we believed that meaning could be struck into metal and passed hand to hand. The image cuts to close-ups of hands, a child's, a woman's, an old man's, each holding a penny in turn, turning it over, watching the light play across its surface. The narrator continues, a touch of that is what makes the coin human. The fingerprints, the smudges, the wear, these are not imperfections, they are signatures. They say, this coin has lived to this. Coin has been somewhere. This coin, like you, has a history. We see flashbacks, grocery stores, bus counters, coffee shops, places where pennies changed hands in moments that no one remembered, and yet, the coin remembered all of them. The voice softens. How many stories fit inside a single cent? A million? A billion. Every transaction, every pocket it passed through, every moment it was exchanged, each was a small, invisible act of human connection. And maybe that's why people can't stop searching, not just for rare pennies or million-dollar finds, but for meaning itself, because deep down, every collector, every dreamer, is looking for something that tells them, you were here, you mattered, your story will be remembered. The camera shifts to a dark room lit by a single lamp. An elderly collector sits before a wooden desk. His hands tremble slightly as he opens a velvet-lined box. Inside rows of pennies, each protected, each labeled, each loved. He lifts one coin, a 2000D, and holds it to the light. The glow of the copper reflects in his eyes. He smiles faintly. Narration continues. He's spent years collecting them, not for fortune, not for fame, but because each one feels like a conversation with time. Every mark tells a story, the nick from a dropped coin, the faded rim from years in circulation, the deep tone from age. Each difference, like the faces of people, is what makes them unique. The collector whispers, they all shine differently, but they shine. Cut to archival footage, the Denver Mint in the year 2000. Machines roaring, copper blanks cascading like waterfalls, flashing lights reflecting off steel dies. The narrator speaks over the noise. Each 2000D cent began as an idea, a piece of raw metal, heated, shaped, struck, and released into the world, and from that moment, it began to live a second life, a human one. Some were spent, forgotten, recycled. Others were kept, loved, studied. A few were lost, but all became part of a story larger than themselves, the music slows, a deep cello joining the piano. We see a young child finding a penny on a playground. He picks it up, smiles, and runs to show his mother. She says, "Keep it, it's lucky." He puts it in his pocket. Narration: we call it luck, but what we really mean is hope that maybe, just maybe, something small and simple can still change our lives, and maybe that is what makes the 2000D penny worth more than money. IT carries the emotion of millions who once held it. IT is the heartbeat of a century, trapped in copper and zinc. The scene transitions, digital screens, credit cards, cryptocurrency logos flashing across the screen. A world that no longer touches money. A world of invisible value. The narrator's voice grows almost mournful. We have entered an age where money no longer feels like anything. IT moves in silence, without sound, without texture, without memory. IT exists only as numbers on screens, weightless, formless, forgettable. But the penny, the 2000D, still feels. IT has weight, IT has warmth. IT resists the digital drift of time. IT reminds us of what it meant to hold something real. The camera pans across a table full of coins from different eras. 1909. 1943 steel cents, 1973, 1988, 1995, 2000D, each one lined up like soldiers of time. The narrator continues, every generation leaves its mark in metal, every mint mark, every date, every design, they are signatures of belief that the small things we make will outlast us, that the world will know we were here. We cut to an old archive photo of Abraham Lincoln. The same profile that has graced the penny for more than a century. The narrator's tone becomes reverent, he sits still on the coin. Eternal, unblinking, his gaze fixed not on the past, but the future. He reminds us that integrity is immortal, that the smallest coin can carry the largest ideals. The camera zooms into Lincoln's engraved face on the 2000D penny, the light dances over the texture of his cheek, the inscription Liberty gleaming beside him. The narrator whispers, "Liberty, the most powerful word ever pressed into metal." It's not just a motto, it's a memory of purpose. Every penny you hold whispers it back to you. Liberty is not free, but it is remembered. The screen fades to a dark sky filled with stars. The narrator continues, softer now, reflective in a way. Coins are like stars, small, countless, shining, ancient. We see only their glimmer, but behind each light is an entire story of creation, of journey, of endurance. The 2000D penny is one such star, tiny, unassuming, yet carrying within it the glow of human hope. Cut to slow motion footage of coins falling into a fountain, the ripples spreading outward endlessly. Every wish cast into that water, every quiet hope for love, success, peace blends softly on a coin. A coin that might be a penny. A coin that might be a 2000D. And in that moment, it becomes sacred. The narrator says, when you wish upon a coin, you give it a purpose beyond economics, you give it meaning, you transform it into something human. That is why, even if the 2000D penny never sells for $255 million, it remains priceless, because no one can measure the worth of a story. No one can weigh the value of memory. The music swells again, soft orchestral strings, ethereal and endless. The narrator's voice rises with gentle conviction. The 2000D Lincoln cent is not just a coin. IT is a chapter in our collective autobiography. IT is proof that the smallest things we create can hold the biggest truths about who we are. And long after the mints fall silent, after machines stop striking, after paper and pixels replace everything we once touched, these coins will still whisper our names, because what we make in copper, we make forever. The screen fades to black, only a faint reflection of a penny remains, spinning slowly in darkness. IT stops, the D-mint mark glinting once more before the light goes out. The screen fades in from black, quiet, almost sacred silence. The faint hum of wind passes through a lonely landscape, an empty field beneath a silver dawn. The first rays of sunlight spill over the horizon, illuminating something small lying in the grass. A glint of copper. A penny, the 2000D. A voice begins, deep, gentle, familiar. There it is, a single cent forgotten by the world, but not by time. IT catches the light, a light it has seen before, across decades, across lives, across countless hands, and in that glimmer, something awakens, not the coin, but us, because the penny was never just about money. IT was always about meaning. The camera slowly zooms in on the coin. We see the details, Lincoln's calm profile, the word liberty, the small d beneath the year 2000. The narrator continues, every letter, every ridge, every glint of light holds a century of stories. A story of a man who led a nation. A story of mints that turned raw metal into promise. A story of ordinary people who turned small change into lifelong memory. And now, as the world moves faster, as value becomes digital, invisible, and endless, the penny remains quiet, patient, eternal. Cut to slow motion, billions of coins rolling out of the Denver Mint, flashing like sunlight scattered on water, then empty mint halls. Silent machinery. Dust and stillness. The narrator's tone softens. The presses have stopped, the workers have gone home, but the coins remain, billions of little reminders that humans once believed in touch, in texture, in tangible worth. We see a close-up of a hand picking up the coin again, this time, a child's hand. The camera follows as the child turns it over, studies the face, and smiles. The narrator continues, that is how legacies live, not in vaults, not in markets, not in headlines, but in hands that Hold what others dropped, hands that feel wonder in what the world calls small, because that is the secret of the 2000D penny. It never needed to be worth $255 million to matter. It was already priceless from the moment it was struck, because it was made to last. We see flashes, old photographs of the Denver Mint, Lincoln's Memorial reflected in sunlight, collectors at tables surrounded by magnifiers in glass cases, the camera lingers on a single face, an elderly woman holding a penny, whispering softly, "I remember these when I was a girl." The narrator breathes the next words like poetry. Every coin is a time machine. It carries the weight of yesterday into the hand of today, and when you look at it closely enough, you don't just see a coin, you see yourself. Cut to images of pennies spinning in slow motion, the reflections merging into one continuous circle of light. The narrator continues, "The circle has no beginning and no end, like time, like memory, like the story of the 2000D. People once searched for it, hoping to find fortune, but what they truly found was something deeper, a reason to look closer, to care, to remember. That's what treasure really is, and not gold. Not silver. Not millions. It's the rediscovery of wonder. The music swells now, a soft orchestra, voices like whispers of history. We see people across the world, a boy in Kenya, a woman in Ohio, a man in Tokyo, each holding a penny, turning it over, smiling at the same small miracle. The narrator's voice rises across nations, across languages, across generations. One small coin connects us. The 2000D cent, a piece of metal that became a piece of meaning, and in its endurance, it tells us something essential. That value is not created by rarity, but by the stories we choose to tell. The screen fades to a night sky, stars glitter softly. A faint, rotating penny appears among them, glowing with the light of copper turned to starlight. The voice speaks one last time, low and eternal. Long after we are gone, the coins will remain silent, patient, waiting, each one holding our fingerprints, our breath, our memory, each one whispering, "I was here, I was touched, I was loved." And maybe, just maybe, that is what immortality really means. The music fades into silence, a heartbeat of copper echoing in the dark. The screen turns black, then, in white text, the final words appear. A penny never loses its worth, only our attention. A long pause, then the faint clink of a single coin hitting the ground, echoing into eternity. Fade out. End.